Hey guys, you don't want to miss this today. We're attending the Blockchain Live 2024 in Dubai in its 13th edition. I have very special guests with me, the chairman and co-founder of Animoca Brands. So let's get into a few things here. If you are in the NFT space, or if you are not, you should be looking at what's happening in this ecosystem. This topic should be addressed in a sense of where the market is going. Also, let's get Yat Siu in here to dive into deep into this topic. And I want to welcome you in this interview with CoinGape. And first, I want to ask you if you could give us some details about the 2024 reports so far, what's happening across Animoca Brands, and what you're expecting in 2025.
Great. Well, thank you for having me. It's a great pleasure to be here. So basically, right now, really, this market has been very much driven by meme coins, for instance, and of course, in the institutional era for Bitcoin ETFs, right? So really, I think a lot of people sometimes forget that at the start of the year, actually, the whole sort of crypto market was actually not really sort of still coming out of a mini winter as it was in 23. ETFs basically brought in institutional capital that basically helped grow the space. And then, of course, gaming started to really accelerate. Some of the big narratives are things like Ton, for instance, and Telegram. That's because they solve a lot of the distribution problems that we had in Web3 gaming. And of course, now, what's also interesting is that meme coins, of course, became very popular. And now what are they doing? They're making their own NFT collections as well.
Yeah.
Right. So it's kind of interesting to see how meme coins and NFTs are kind of forming together a kind of union of sorts as well. So that's kind of growing that space. I think another thematic is Bitcoin ordinals and sort of what's happening in the Bitcoin sort of ecosystem. That again was something that was not present just a few years ago, and now you have a lot of innovation in the Bitcoin ecosystem itself just because of that, and of course all the L1, L2s. So yeah, it's a very exciting time, and we do think that gaming and of course things like education, for instance, are actually going to be growth narratives for 25.
I mean, I was looking at your last reports. You guys are doing amazing. But what do you think the biggest challenges in the NFT world, in the gaming so far?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest challenges we had was basically around mass adoption in terms of how to bring users into the space. Most people don't realize that Apple, Facebook, and Google, and Steam actually don't allow NFTs to be used inside games. Or you can have the NFT, but you can't actually have utility for them. So that restricts the growth of Web3 games. But again, basically with Ton and Telegraph, that problem is solved. So that's kind of that's a positive thing. The other one, of course, is that now we've come to a point where it takes time to make good games. And new games like Off the Grid, which is one of our portfolios, Godzilla, actually is now creating the kind of games that a traditional gamer who's not in crypto, not in Web3, who just wants to play a fun game can compete with, right? Because it takes some time, right? Before, how do I get someone who's playing PUBG or Fortnite to say, I want to play a Web3 game? It needs a certain quality, and now we've reached that point. So again, quite positive about where that's going. And so those were the challenges in there. The other challenge that we have as an industry is around reputation. So I don't mean reputation from an institutional standpoint only. I mean reputation from the perspective of, when I do an airdrop campaign, I actually want to target real users. The problem is that many of them are airdrop farmed. They're bots of people I don't know because there's no reputation layer. And so we're trying to solve that with Mochaverse now. And I think if you can solve reputation, we'll create better trust. And we create better trust, we can build stronger networks. So that's kind of one of the big challenges we have to solve. Essentially, how do we build better trust amongst participants and ecosystem players in Web3?
Yeah, so I want to ask you a bit about yourself. What brought you here in this ecosystem of NFT? How long have you been in this industry? And if you could give some advice to the new starters who is willing to invest in this world and be part of it,
sure.
What would be this bit of advice?
Yeah, so I got into the space in late 2017, basically through CryptoKitties, which was basically something what we were involved in through a studio in Vancouver. And with that, when we discovered what NFTs actually do, which gives you digital property rights, it gives you ownership in, in this case, games and applications, but other things as well. Ownerships in the networks that you can help construct. We thought, well, this is the future. And so we went from being a traditional Web2 gaming company going completely into Web3, not just gaming. We have over 540 portfolios today, of which about 160 plus are in gaming. So we're not just doing gaming, we're doing everything else in the space. And the way that I thought of this market was very similar to the early internet. So in other words, the parallels of Web3 are very similar to how Web1 was built back in the 90s and the early 2000s. And so how would you play that? And that's kind of where we decided to invest the way that we did. So we also have this investing component, which is why some people say we're like a VC, even though we're investing mostly out of our balance sheet to sort of help grow the space. And for people who don't know much about it, the mental model I like to tell people is it's kind of like visiting a new country. Web3 is like a nation. You can't just stick, it's not technology. It's a community, there's a group of people, you want to go learn about it. And just like when you want to, for instance, invest in China, or you want to invest in UAE or maybe Saudi, what you do, you have to go visit the place, you have to visit the country and actually explore it before you do something.
Know more about it.
Know more about it. And what does it take? Well, you have to buy an air ticket, you have to maybe get a hotel, you have to come visit the country, you have to spend a little bit of money, not too much, just for fun, right? And that's exactly the way that I would think about entering Web3. Basically, enter Web3, you don't have to spend that much money, but just learn about it, participate in it, understand its ethos, and then I think you can start to go deeper. It's really hard to just go there and say, let me just buy something. Because if you don't understand it, then you don't know what you do.
You'll get lost eventually.
That's right.
Yeah. What are the key points or takeaways that you would like the attendees of Blockchain Live 2024 in Dubai to take from your participation on being on the panel and the opening ceremony and from these 2 days during this event?
There's a lot, but I would say here's a few points. The first one is that when we think of tokenization and tokens, we think of them as network effects. So meaning that we think the value is generated from these platforms and these games based on how strong is the network effect basically of the product. And the token represents that. If you don't have a good network effect, then you don't have any value as formed.
Yes.
So the network asset, that's something that I think a lot of people still sometimes don't understand. They talk about crypto as a currency or a store of value. There's one aspect of that, but it's really about the network, right? Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, Ton, Mocha, all these things are network assets. So I think that's something to understand. How are the network effects being built? That's kind of one example, right? The second thing is that we've entered an institutional era of crypto. And that's important because actually the reason why Bitcoin, for instance, and Ethereum and Solana and Ton have done well is because they have institutional backing. That's something that they wouldn't do, for instance, they wouldn't invest into a meme coin because that's something they won't understand. There's millions of meme coins that are out there. The market has grown, but there's also broad dilution of tension, right? So basically looking at which projects are supported by institutions is another thing that gives you some form of credibility into a project. I think that's important for people to, I think, appreciate and understand as well. And then finally, I would say one other big area that we're very focused on is on reputation. We think essentially that's a longer term trend, but reputation, if you can build and develop on and make that stronger, then we have better trust, then that's how the ecosystem will grow and will open up entirely new markets because of that.
At the level of Animoca Brands, what are your latest projects, innovations that you're excited to announce about it today to our audience, the CoinGape?
Sure. So one very key one is on Mochaverse, which is basically our reputation layer. And the more reputation you build on Mochaverse, the more benefits you get, not just proof of humanity, right? We have over 540 portfolio companies, of which less than a third have launched essentially projects and tokens. And so if you become part of Mochaverse, you can participate in a network and benefit from this essentially by sort of joining the ecosystem, helping it grow and get value. So that's kind of one thing on Mochaverse. The second one is on education. So we think education is obviously a long tail, but it's going to be a big opportunity. We're trying to solve student loans and student financing with DeFi. It's a $2.2 trillion market today. It's massive. And actually it's something that most people haven't really solved in a proper way, except traditional finance. And we think bringing in basically Web3, DeFi, and essentially the blockchain ecosystem will actually not only sort of create a better solution, right, for all the reasons that blockchain can develop, but also it will bring more people on chain. Because actually, if you're a student and crypto actually ends up becoming a way in which you end up financing your student education, then actually we think that person will be in our ecosystem in Web3 for life.
My last question. When it comes to the markets of Dubai in specific and the UAE in general, how big is the growth to compare to the past 5 years and to compare to the 5 coming years down the line? And where does this market stand among the global markets?
So definitely UAE is a global leader in the Web3 space, no question. And I think it's stood the test of time, not only because it was growing back in the days when the market was growing, but they continued to invest in it when the market was in a difficult period. So people remember that, right? There's a sense of loyalty as well to say, hey, you didn't just go with the wind. You basically decided to sail through the storm and actually make commitment around that area. And I think that actually is a very, very key aspect why essentially the region will continue to be a leader. There's other territories like Hong Kong, for instance, and even Japan and so on that actually are emerging as well as leaders. But UAE currently really is leading in the space. Dubai very much stands on its own. And you can see it from the growth. Think about how many people have moved here just because they could participate in the growth of the system. Dubai and UAE have this powerful network of not just investors, but platforms, companies, technology, solution providers. Right? That's the reason that people are coming here. It's not just about the money. It's actually about the entire ecosystem. And you have a head start. And if you believe, as we do, that the ecosystem will actually grow, then it only makes sense that Dubai will grow too.
Fantastic. Yeah, so thank you so much for this interview, for all the insights that you shared with CoinGape today. I wish you all the best, and we will see you around. Thank you so much.
Look forward to it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.